Welcome, dear listeners, to History with Herodotus, where we embark on a journey through the annals of time, uncovering the secrets of our collective past. Today, we find ourselves in the midst of a most fascinating tale, one that would shape the course of Western civilization, the Conquest of Gaul by Julius Caesar. This epic saga, spanning nearly a decade, would witness the clash of mighty armies, the rise and fall of legendary leaders, and the transformation of a vast and storied land. As we delve into the earliest history of the conquest of Gaul, let us first set our gaze upon the majestic landscape of Gaul itself. A land of rolling hills, dense forests, and winding rivers, Gaul was home to a diverse array of Celtic tribes, each with their own distinct culture and traditions. Our tale begins in the early 1st century BCE, when the Celtic tribes of Gaul were undergoing a period of significant upheaval. The migrations of various Celtic tribes from Central Europe, including the Helvetii from modern-day Switzerland, had created a complex web of alliances and rivalries among the Gaulish tribes. This instability would ultimately play into the hands of Julius Caesar, who sought to exploit these divisions to further his own ambitions. One of the key precursors to the conquest was the migration of the Helvetii, who began to move into Gaul in search of new lands and resources. This migration put pressure on the existing tribes in Gaul, leading to a series of conflicts and alliances that would ultimately draw in the Romans. In 61 BCE, the Helvetii had begun to make overtures to the Romans, seeking permission to settle within their territories. However, the Romans were wary of these newcomers, and tensions began to rise between the two groups. It was against this backdrop of tension and uncertainty that Julius Caesar would eventually launch his campaign into Gaul. Using the pretext of protecting Rome's allies and interests in the region, Caesar would skillfully exploit the divisions among the Gaulish tribes, using a combination of diplomacy, strategic maneuvering, and military force to further his own ambitions. As we explore the earliest history of the conquest of Gaul, we find that the stage was set for conflict by the actions of key figures such as Vercingetorix, a Helvetian nobleman who had sought to unite the Celtic tribes against the Romans. His efforts would ultimately fail, but they would contribute to the instability and tension that characterized this pivotal moment in Western history. In 58 BCE, Caesar would cross the Rubicon River with his legions, marking the beginning of a campaign that would take him deep into the heart of Gaul. The fate of a continent hung in the balance, as the Romans and Gauls engaged in a struggle that would shape the course of Western civilization for centuries to come. As we delve into the heart of the conquest, we see Caesar's military genius on full display. His campaigns were marked by lightning-fast marches, clever tactical maneuvers, and a deep understanding of the Gaulish tribes' strengths and weaknesses. One notable example is the Battle of Bibrax in 58 BCE, where Caesar's forces decisively defeated the Helvetii, forcing them to retreat back to their homeland. This victory not only showcased Caesar's military prowess, but also demonstrated his ability to adapt to the unpredictable terrain and guerrilla warfare tactics employed by the Gauls. Caesar's conquest of Gaul was also marked by a series of brilliant diplomatic maneuvers. He skillfully exploited the divisions among the Gaulish tribes, forming alliances with certain leaders while crushing others who dared to resist. The famous chieftain Vercingetorix, who would eventually become Caesar's most formidable foe, initially allied himself with the Romans before turning against them. This complex dance of alliances and rivalries played out against a backdrop of brutal warfare as cities were besieged, armies clashed, and the very fabric of Gaulish society was torn apart. These four words encapsulate the sense of irreversible momentum that characterized the conquest of Gaul. Once Caesar had committed to this campaign, there was no turning back. The fate of a continent hung in the balance. One illustrative example of the brutal yet calculating nature of Caesar's campaign is the Siege of Alesia in 52 BCE. Here, Caesar's forces were vastly outnumbered by the combined armies of Vercingetorix and his allies, yet they managed to hold their ground against overwhelming odds. The Roman legions constructed an intricate series of fortifications, both to protect themselves from the Gaulish warriors and to besiege the city of Alesia itself. This masterpiece of military engineering ultimately forced Vercingetorix to surrender, marking a decisive turning point in the conquest. The conquest has been marked by moments of breathtaking heroism, cunning diplomacy, and brutal violence. Yet, even as Caesar stands victorious, the seeds of future rebellion are being sown. The years following the siege of Alesia saw a significant decrease in Gallic resistance, as many tribes either accepted Roman rule or were forcibly subjugated. Caesar, ever the calculating leader, implemented policies aimed at integrating Gaul into the Roman Empire. He established a network of roads, promoted trade, and encouraged the adoption of Roman culture and governance. The city of Narbonne, founded by Caesar in 1118 BCE, became a hub of Roman influence, serving as a center for administration, commerce, and cultural exchange. However, not all Gauls were content with Roman rule. Sporadic rebellions continued to erupt throughout the region, often led by charismatic chieftains who rallied their tribes against the occupiers. One notable example is the revolt of the Bibrax, which took place in 51 BCE. Although ultimately unsuccessful, this rebellion highlighted the ongoing tensions between the Romans and the Gauls, as well as the lingering sense of Gallic identity that persisted despite Roman dominance. As Caesar's power grew, so did his ambitions. He began to turn his attention to other regions, seeking to expand Rome's borders and solidify his own position within the empire. The conquest of Gaul had provided a vast influx of wealth, manpower, and prestige, which Caesar leveraged to further his goals. However, this expansionism also created new challenges, as Rome faced increased pressure from neighboring tribes and states. The French language, for example, is a direct descendant of the Latin spoken by Roman occupiers, while the region's cuisine, art, and architecture all bear testament to the enduring impact of Roman rule. In conclusion, dear listeners, our exploration of the Conquest of Gaul by Julius Caesar has taken us on a journey through the intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and conflicts that define this pivotal moment in history. As we close this chapter on the Gallic Wars, we're left with a deeper understanding of the enduring legacy of Caesar's campaign and its lasting impact on the modern world. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.